What's up everyone, Howler here, coach of your Delta Gligars. Today I am bringing you the first of 3 draft analysis for Season 7 of the APA. If this is your first time to the channel, welcome. I encourage you to subscribe. We are, I believe, at the time of recording, 8 subscribers away from 200. That would be super cool to hit, hopefully before the end of the calendar year, or going into as we start showing off the games. But yes, welcome. I like to do things a little bit differently around here. Try to speak my mind, keep the things a little bit on edge, I guess. So normally I would like to try to do as thorough a draft analysis as possible, but there's 3 drafts for one season. So I'd have my notes for every single Pokemon, like this is what made this Pokemon good, this is why I really like to draft it, but no, not this time, because I would have to do that for 3 different drafts. Yes, so the way the season works, we're using one draft from weeks 1 to 4, and then we scrap that team and we draft again. We use a different team from weeks 5 to 8, do it all over again for weeks 9 to 12. And then come playoff time, the top 8 teams out of 16 coaches will make playoffs, and we have to choose which one of those 3 drafts that we want to take with us into playoffs. So it's important to, this format definitely tests your drafting skills more than any other format that I've ever seen before. The only other time I've seen it done was APA Season 5, this being Season 7. So the Season 5 was a little bit different in that you could create it like a super team from all the mons that you had drafted across the 3 teams. Although this season is different in the sense you don't create a super team, you just pick one of the 3 teams that you drafted. You're not pooling mons from different teams that you had over the course of the season. So I think that's better. Personally, I think the composition of the super team would have been too crazy, and you would have had really, really overpowered teams heading into playoffs. So it just also would have been really difficult to effectively use your budget when you're trying to pool from much more limited number of mods. So we have 120 points to work with, and you're allowed to pick, I'm not sure if 9 was the minimum or if it was 10, but I'm pretty sure 11 was the maximum, and we ended up taking 11 mons. Also, if you are new to the channel and you're wondering where the Delta Gligars name come from, it's because I coached the Delta Tigers Bantam baseball team in Delta, BC. I live in Richmond, BC right now. I'm actually going to be moving in the winter, near February, March time, so that could create some complications with trying to get battles done. I'm hoping it's not a big issue, but for now it's fine. Nothing to worry about for at least the first half of the season. But we are no longer the Delta Tigers. As of a couple of days ago, try not to look at my haircut, we are the Delta Blue Jays. So, when I first started YouTube, I was coaching the Coquitlam Reds baseball team, so my draft league team was the Coquitlam Red Gyarados. Then I shifted to the Delta Tigers, shifted the draft league team name. Currently, there are no plans to change the draft league team name from Delta Gligars to something else, at least for as long as Generation 8 is a thing. If Generation 9 and draft league is still somehow relevant by the time Generation 9 comes out, then maybe I'll consider changing the team name. Anyways, let's get into the draft analysis now. I don't want to talk forever because I don't like recording these things in the first place. One other thing to note, though, because we are only using each team for 4 weeks. You are not allowed to make transactions after the draft at any point in the season. So 10 or 11 mons or however many mons you draft, you are stuck with them. You cannot fix any mistakes that you may make in the draft. So that's another reason why this format tests your drafting skills more than any other format that we've previously seen. So without further ado, in the first draft, I had the 12th pick out of 16 coaches. Not the most ideal spot to be. But it's not the worst when Celesteela falls to you at pick number 12. And that was one of the 2 mons that I wanted from the start. I'm not going to say what the other mon is because I don't want to reveal my plans to the other coaches who are going to be drafting 2 more teams later down the road in the season. All I'll say is that the other mon that I was looking at was already gone by the time it made it to me. The other thing, I don't know how this is going to work, but supposedly if you get an undesirable draft position in like the first draft, that increases your chances of getting a better draft position in any of the future drafts. Yeah, I'm not sure how they're going to do that, but again, I'll take 12 if I can get Celesteela at pick 12. This mon I got my first ever championship with in Season 6 of the IBL. I really took off after I made a transaction for it to have Z-move eligibility. Originally, I wasn't able to use it with Z-moves. But Z-move set basically won me the semifinals in a matchup that I lost in the regular season, and then I went on to win the finals. So it's really important to, I think, build around Celesteela so that you can have it be that dual threat in prep. Like, you can use it as a defensive win con or as an offensive win con. So you don't want it to be that thing that you just count on switching into everything to absorb hits and then, Leech Seed protect stuff. Even though that's a really good set, you want it to be as versatile as possible. So, you need to build a solid defensive backbone around it. So that's going to be the goal. On the previous Celesteela team that I had, I picked Hydreigon as my dragon type, but that was taken by Kurt at the back wheel, so I had no opportunity to take that. And the other 2 mons that I were looking at were Latias or Kommo-o. Kommo-o being worth 15 points, Latias with 16, and my front office all was in agreement that I should try Kommo-o. And honestly, I've been wanting to draft Kommo-o for a very long time, and I just never did. Actually, the APA Academy, when Sword and Shield first came out, that was like the first really big draft league of Sword and Shield era. Like just when we were like starting to figure out that we could use land timer for battles and whatnot. So we had done a initial draft planning for like a pre-Pokemon home draft, and then we scrapped that draft and drafted again, used a different team for that season. And my first overall pick in the initial draft was actually Kommo-o, and then I never got to use it in that season of APA Academy. But now I finally get to use this Pokemon in draft. As an added bonus is that Clangorous Soul, the Omni boosting move that you can go for. It's also a sound-based move, so if you use it in combination with Throat Spray, then you get an additional boost in special attack, so you get to +1 in all of your stats, +2 in special attack, at the cost of losing 1/3 of your health. That is allowed in this league. Now, I had to ask just to confirm with the admins, and Owen, when I asked, Owen was like, well, I didn't even know that leagues didn't allow that move anymore. But it turns out, you may have seen my upload for BFO Surge a couple of days ago. Kommo-o is allowed for 15 points in that tournament, but Clangorous Soul is not allowed, even though they are allowing things like Xurkitree and Manaphy to use Tail Glow in that tournament, but they're not allowing Kommo-o to use Clangorous Soul. Interesting. So a combination of Celesteela and Kommo-o, not a terribly fast combo. Both kind of count on their setup options to be offensive rather than like just be breakers right out of the gate. And the two of them, there's only 3 types that they don't resist between the two of them, being Fighting, Ice, and Ghost. And so the next pick, I rounded out my Fairy Dragon Steel core by taking Primarina. So Primarina is going to resist Fighting and Ice. Freeze Dry. Freeze Dry is a good move. We still don't resist Freeze Dry, but we'll fix that in the... How many Freeze Dry resists we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 Freeze Dry resists. Although one of them is due to their ability, which I'll get into. So, yeah. First 3 bonds, we resist every type in the game except for Ghost. But even then, Kommo-o can run Bulletproof, so that it is immune to Shadow Ball. So we just don't switch into Poltergeist, but we switch into a lot of other attacks so far with these first couple picks. Primarina can be used as a very solid breaker, and I think is also good value at 12 points. So we've got, in my opinion, one of the stronger Fairy Dragon Steel cores in the league. The only thing I don't really like about it is that we do have 2 electric weaknesses in there with the Celesteela and the Primarina, so we'll definitely try to fix that later on down the road. So the next pick. My team so far, you know, pretty good type synergy wise, but what it's lacking is the speed. And I'm looking at the really like the upper ends like speedy mons type thing, and I'm thinking that the only mon that I'm kind of interested in taking for this team is going to be Salazzle at base 117 speed, and that's going to be the fastest mon on my team. So some people are saying maybe a bit too early for Primarina. I disagree. I think it's a very good value mon at 12 points. But if you wanted to argue that it was a bit early to take Salazzle here, I would not blame you. But you know, I have to have something over base 115 speed for me personally. That's kind of the marker that I was looking at, and Salazzle was really the only thing that made sense to me at that spot. So it's another fairy resist on top of the Celesteela, so we're not just counting on Celesteela to beat fairies for Kommo-o. They can still be equally as offensive in a given matchup, the Celesteela and the Kommo-o. So Salazzle is something that I used very recently on my UPBA Season 3 team that I did not draft, but I picked it up in free agency, and it did okay for me. It wasn't fantastic. I didn't bring it to every single game, but I enjoyed using it. And you might notice a theme going on in the first 4 picks. We have a mono Gen 7 team so far. This was not intentional, and it's not going to last very long, but because the next pick is Thundurus-T. Now, I did have Zeraora on the Celesteela team that I won my first championship with, but I wasn't able to get that. So imagine at pick 12 I get Celesteela Zeraora combo. How insane would that be? But we get the next best Volt Absorb mon being Thundurus-T. I don't care so much about picking another flying type with Celesteela. I think flying type is one of the more common dual typings to grab. We actually only have 2 other dual typings on this team, so I don't think I had a ton of dual typings on the previous Celesteela team anyway, so I don't know why I'm stressing that point too much. But Thundurus at base 101 speed is actually the second fastest mon on our team, which is not the greatest, but it's still okay. it's the first hazard removal that we have with Defog. Not Prankster Defog like its incarnate counterpart, but you know, that defogging option is still there. I don't know why. I prefer not to have this in a defogging role when it has base 145 special attack and all of that amazing coverage on the special side. But yeah, this supports Celesteela super nicely, having Volt Absorb, especially when we have 2/3 of our Fairy Dragon Steel Core weak to electric. Having that electric immunity with Thundurus-T really solid mon is great. Also, not something that I've used before. I've used Thundurus Incarnate, but I have not used Thundurus Therian yet, so it would be cool to try that out. So the next pick is going to be Miltank. I really wanted Miltank for this team because, one, Celesteela being my main gripe with Celesteela has always been that it's a steel type that doesn't have rocks. And if you watch the draft stream, they kind of made a meme out of like steel and ground types that don't have access to stealth rocks. But it is a thing to think about. Like, usually that's usually a role that you count on your steel type to fill, and in this case it doesn't. But we do have Kommo-o able to set stealth rocks as well. That's probably not its best set, but it can do that in any given matchup. And we have Miltank to set rocks as well. And the other thing about our steel type is that it doesn't resist ice because it's part flying type. Well, we have Miltank with Thick Fat to resist, to be an ice resist. It also covers for Celesteela's fire weakness. And I mentioned, you know, we don't switch into Poltergeist. Well, we could also run Scrappy on Miltank to, you know, switch in, be immune to ghost type moves, and then hit them for damage with our normal stab. Excuse me. Yeah, so I really like Miltank for this team. Actually, John Jr. said something really interesting in the draft stream that Owen, who was, I think, two picks behind me, so I was pick 12, he was pick 14. The Owen took Licky Licky, I think, right before I was going to take Miltank. And so I don't have a Wish Pasher on this team. And Owen already had Sylveon as a Wish Pasher. So I always say like Wish Pasher. I can't say those words properly consecutively, but you know, he thinks it would be good. It would have been good for us to maybe trade those two picks. And I do think there is definitely some validity to that. But I am totally fine having Miltank on my team and no Wish Passer. There we go. Yeah, because I could have. We could if we had the ability to swap Miltank and Licky Licky. I think they're both 8-point mons. Then we definitely could, except for the fact there are no trades or transactions allowed. So we are stuck with Miltank and Licky Licky respectively. Anyways, on to the next pick. Continuing with our Gen 7 theme, we've got Dhelmise. Dhelmise is going to give us our grass type, our ground resist. And I also really wanted Rapid Spin from this slot. It was basically in between Serena and Dhelmise for the grass type on this team. Serena was already taken, so that meant I had to prioritize Dhelmise in this slot. So the four mons, Kommo-o, Primarina, Salazzle, Dhelmise. When Sun and Moon first came out, I made a competitive team using those four Pokemon plus Togedemaru and Golisopod. So it was a mono Gen 7 team with no legendary. So I could almost make a mono Gen 7 team from this team if I threw Celesteela in there, except, you know, on that previous team I just chose not to use any Ultra Beasts or Tapus or anything like that. I have 5 Gen 7 Mons on this team. 4 of them, which I used on a team like just to mess around with. It wasn't a draft league team or anything. It was just a team that I made when the games first came out. So, you know, having them all on this draft league team I think is pretty cool. Dhelmise, of course, a lot better than it was back then just because it has access to Poltergeist now. Man, this thing hits so hard. 3 stabs Poltergeist, Power Whip, Steelworker, Gyro Ball, or Anchor Shot. I really love Anchor Shot's trapping ability. Being a spinner and a spin blocker in itself, I think is super cool. That's one of the main things that drew me to Dhelmise in the first place when Sun and Moon first came out. So yeah, maybe not as bulky as you would like. Actually, now that I think about it, my first ever draft league on YouTube, IBL D League, I had Dhelmise on that team as well. So this is my first time using Dhelmise since then. So I hope I can use it a bit better than I did in that season. I don't think it was. I just remember one game where I played horribly with it and proceeded to get swept. But anyways, moving on to we've got 4 mons left. All right, so one thing that I need is a dark type, and I thought by far the best dark type for this team was going to be Bisharp. So usually, a lot of people find it difficult to fit Bisharp onto their draft teams because as a steel, it's kind of like a fake steel type, right? Like it doesn't switch in, it doesn't take hits, it doesn't switch into fairies, it doesn't resist fairy, and just on the especially defensive side, it's pretty frail. So like it doesn't switch into Dracos or anything like that. But as a dark type that doesn't compound the fairy weakness, because we can still be a fairy killer in a sense. I think that supports Kommo-o tremendously, and that's the main reason why I wanted it. And getting a second steel on top of Celesteela, I think, is also pretty valuable, because this is a steel that can set stealth rocks. It's not going to be its primary role, I wouldn't think. But having that option is nice. Like we've accounted for the fact that Celesteela doesn't get rocks pretty well. We've got rocks on the Kommo-o, rocks on the Miltank, rocks on the Bisharp, and still 2 mons left that we picked later on that can also set rocks. So I've generally not been a fan of Bisharp just because of it being a fake steel type, kind of like Kartana is a fake steel type. But I think it fits this team super well, and I'm hoping that it can make Kommo-o in particular even more threatening with this team. So next, we need to get our ground type. Initially, I was planning on getting a lower tier ground type, but then I realized, well, what the heck am I going to do with the rest of my points if I go for the lower tier ground type? I could just use them all on Hippowdon. That's 13 points and still available. So that's what I did. And actually, I had Hippowdon on my previous championship winning team with the Celesteela. So having that familiarity there is good. Now people say, oh, you picked the worst sand setter. But okay, you're not wrong, but Hippowdon doesn't need to set sand to be a good Pokemon. Like Sand Force, it is like the fact that it can run Sand Force, it doesn't have to run Sandstream. I think is good. We didn't have anything to abuse Sand on the previous team, and we don't on this team. Basically, the only synergy with Sand is that we could have Overcoat Kommo-o so that Kommo-o doesn't get chipped down by the sand, but I don't really think that's the best. This is the best synergy ever. I just like Hippowdon because you can use it as Fizz Death or specially defensive just because of how much HP it has. Like, it's ridiculously fat Fizz Def and can also be viable as a Spadefmon in certain matchups. So whereas not every ground type can be brought as an effective Spadefmon. So yeah, we used up a lot of points on Hippowdon. Maybe it's not the greatest fit for this team, but I think overall it's just one of my favorite ground types to use because it has reliable recovery. We have 3 sources of reliable recovery on the team, being Milk Drink on the Miltank, Synthesis on the Dhelmise, and Slack Off with Hippowdon. So Now we have 6 points left. My plan was to take a 5-point Mon and a 1-point Mon for my last 2 picks. So I was pretty set on going with an Ice type in the 5-point tier. So originally I was set on Frostmoth because I thought it would be cool to draft Frostmoth. It's not something that you see drafted all that often. It's another hazard remover. You can't, it's pretty underrated special bulk with ice scales. I know Heat Wave or Flamethrower is a move that it's 4 times weak to, but because of its ice scales and massive SPDF, it wouldn't die to that, even that. So it can come in on like any special attacker that exists, basically, and just pivot out with U-turn, and maybe in the right matchup be a Quiver Sweeper. But I kind of thought that I wanted a little bit more immediate speed for this team, so maybe this wasn't the right fit for Frostmoth. So instead, I had to choose between Cryogonal and Galarian Mr. Mime, and I gotta fit. Cryogonal's so boring. Like, everybody knows what Cryogonal does. It always gets drafted over something like Galarian Mr. Mime. So let's try Mr. Mime. We've got Screen Cleaner. It's kind of the only Gen 8 Mon on this team. Galarian Forms, if Galarian Forms count as Gen 8 Mons in this case. It does get Rapid Spin, so it's like the third hazard remover on this team. Cryogonal gets Rapid Spin and Defog, but like Mr. Mime gets more coverage, and it's not as fast. It's not quite as fast. It's not quite as powerful, but it gets more coverage. I didn't have a Psychic type on this team, so I have Psychic and Ice Stab now, and in my opinion, those are 2 of the better stabs in draft. I like having offensive Psychic stab because the ability to run either Psychic or Psyshock in a matchup is really valuable based on whatever you're going up against. So maybe one weakness of this team as well is that we lack some momentum. We have Flip Turn on the Primarina, Volt Switch on the Thundurus-T, and Baton Pass, if you even count that momentum if you even count Baton Pass as momentum. We have that on the Mr. Mime, and that's really the only momentum that we have. So not much Volt Turn going around, but good type synergy, I think. And usually I would make an effort to try to bring all of the Mons that I draft at some point throughout the season, but I cannot guarantee that in a season where we're using 3 different drafts for 4 weeks each. Like, especially with the caliber of players that we're going up against in this league, I have to bring the best Pokemon in a given matchup. I can't go out of my way to bring them on to a game just because I want to bring it, and maybe it's not the best fit. Like, I need to bring the best 6 Mons to every game, and hopefully, if Mr. Mime is one of those best 6 Mons, then cool. Anyways, we do have 1 point left to work with, and I was going to pick Shelmet, but it seems like maybe I should have gone Shelmet first, Mr. Galarian, Mr. Mime, with my last pick, because Matt O'Shea sniped me of Shelmet, if you can believe it, and he already had it in BBL, from what I can tell. My opponent didn't even know it. He already had Shelmet in BBL, and now he's going to take it in APA too? Come on, Matt. Let somebody else in on the Shelmet fun. That has Baton Pass as well, but instead I got stuck with Ammonite. Look, Ammonite isn't that bad. Look at its base stats. It has base 100 defense. It has base 90 special attack. It has the same special attack set as Galarian Mr. Mime, and Galarian Mr. Mime doesn't get Power of Meteor Beam. Galarian Mr. Mime doesn't get Swift Swim and Power of Meteor Beam. Galarian Mr. Mime doesn't get Shell Smash, even though we have no base speed, so it's not like after Shell Smash we're going to be faster than anything anyway, but it's honestly not that bad, and like we were going to be taking Shelmet as a hazard setter, something that has like Toxic Spikes. You could actually use Shelmet as a defensive pivot because it has decent defensive stats. But you can't really use Ammonite as a defensive pivot because, one, it has no pivoting move. But as far as hazard setting go, it outclasses Shelmet because it has Stealth Rocks, Spikes, and Toxic Spikes. All three. The only thing it doesn't have is Sticky Webs. And we do have Weak Armor as well, so we can bring it as a Sash Weak Armor lead. If they want to hit us with a physical move, we'll probably be faster than you next turn, and we'll get up another layer of hazards. Boom! So, those last two picks were fun. I hope you enjoyed this draft analysis. Of course, it ended up being over half an hour because I like to talk, I guess, about drafts. I like to not just blow off the draft analysis. Usually I would have lots of notes for each, like I said, but I didn't even have really that many notes this time, and I still went over half an hour. So if you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like on this video, comment down below what your thoughts on the team are, and subscribe to the channel to help us get to 200 subscribers. And if you're excited for this upcoming season of the APA, I should tell you about a couple of videos that we got coming up. On Christmas Day, I do plan on posting a special video going over a game other than Pokemon, but trying to appeal to Pokemon fans at the same time. So you'll see what that is. And on Christmas Eve, we also should have, no guarantees, but we should have the semifinals for the Pack Low Tier League going up. I'm hoping I can get that up on Christmas Eve. I don't know exactly if I'll be able to pull that off or not. And then you will see the Week 1 battle for APA going up on New Year's Day, January the 1st, where we take on Diet Tight and the New Britain Rockruff. So yeah, hope you're looking forward to all that, and have a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays, whatever you celebrate. Enjoy the holiday season, enjoy your time off from work, school, whatever. Yeah, and thanks for watching this video. See you later.